I'm feeling very intellectual. For this video, I thought it might be fun, well, maybe not fun, but at least interesting, to go back and reread some of the books that I read in my high school English classes. Come on guys, let's go back to high school. Don't you want to go back to high school? I have always been a reader. I have always loved reading, and I do have to attribute a lot of that to school. The book fair was the highlight of my life at that point. I loved going to the library. I honestly think that I would kill someone to go spend some time in my middle school library. Not literally, but that place is very near and dear to my heart. And I think it would be healing to go spend some time there. I also was, not to brag, but I was in the accelerated reading program in kindergarten. And then my parents decided to test me to see if I was gifted, and it came back that I was very average. I was just kind of good at reading, so I've just always had an affinity towards reading. English was always my best subject in school. Looking back on my reading habits and just what I tended towards, I feel like it makes so much sense that I've ended up here. And by here I mean talking to a camera in my childhood bedroom. But I thought it would just be such an interesting concept to go back and revisit some of those quintessential high school English books. Books that if you went to high school, in America at least, you were most likely forced to read these books. I see these books and immediately I think Mrs. McElroy, High School Language Arts, which God bless that woman. And if you guys did not have an emotional support language arts teacher in school, you are missing out. You also probably weren't depressed. But I just want to revisit these books as a now 24-year-old. See if I can find a newfound appreciation for them now that I'm reading them by choice rather than force. I feel like I never really loved the assigned readings in school. I was always just very eager to get back to the books that I was choosing to read for myself. So I never really got super into any of them, never really paid that much attention to them. I paid the attention that I had to in order to do well, but that was about it. But we'll see. I want to reread these books. I actually want to absorb them, maybe do some annotating, which is crazy because that's what we had to do to them in school. That was part of our assignment. So the very first book that we are going to start this video out with is none other than Animal Farm by George Orwell. I'm sure most of you are familiar with this book. I don't really remember a whole lot about these books that I've chosen, but I do remember reading them. And I do remember vaguely what they're about. So, talking farm animals that rebel and take over the farm. I believe this is political commentary on communism, the negative effects of communism, and how it does not work. There's no way that it's positive. No. There's no way they were making us read communist propaganda in high school. But this book is very small. Like, I feel like I could rip this in half. I'm not going to. But here is our first high school English class book. Let's get started. These pigs kind of have a point in deciding that men are the root of all evil. It's all coming back, you guys. I am very much remembering this now. It's giving me flashbacks. But I started this morning. I've been sitting outside. I've been drinking a matcha. There's a breeze. The birds are chirping. I'm just happy and loving life. I'm already on about page 73, but that is about like halfway through. So I think I'm just gonna sit out here for the rest of the morning and finish this. I do feel like I should have gone somewhere in public and read this though, so people think I'm intelligent. But I think I do actually kind of like this. Like, I'm not having a bad time at all. I'm even annotating and like underlining quotes. I know my language arts teacher would be so proud of me. Do I even really need to explain what this is about? Like, let me just start by saying, I have a very basic working knowledge of the communist agenda and the Russian Revolution. But on its face, this is a story about a farm. And the animals on said farm are fed up. They decide they're overworked, they don't receive enough profit, and that they are going to rebel and take over the farm. They are going to rebel and run the farm themselves because they decide that all men are the enemy and men are the root of all of the issues in their lives. Let us face it, our lives are miserable, laborious, and short. We are born, we are given just so much food as will keep the breath in our bodies, and those of us who are capable of it are forced to work to the last atom of our strength. And then a little bit down the page, it is summed up in a single word: man. Remove man from the scene, and the root cause of hunger and overwork is abolished forever. And I have to say at this point, I don't find myself necessarily disagreeing with the animals. But because this is satire and an allegory, I do remember that from class, but because this is metaphorical for communism and dictatorship and corrupt political systems, things are going downhill. That's the basic gist of this book so far. I'm sorry if you were looking for an in-depth analysis of this so you could cheat on your English test. You're not going to find it here. Also, you'll probably get the answers wrong if you just listen to me, so don't do that. I am also very much picturing Back at the Barnyard while I'm reading this. Back at the Barnyard. This book taking place in the Back at the Barnyard cinematic universe. I do think that Otis's dad singing "I Won't Back Down" by Johnny Cash while fighting off the coyotes is probably one of the most impactful movie scenes I've ever seen in my life. We're having a good time right now, and I'm probably just gonna go finish this. I genuinely liked this book. I am so surprised that the first book of this video has yielded such positive results. Like the last line of this: the creatures outside looked from pig to man, and from man to pig, and from pig to man again. But already it was impossible to say which was which. You're joking! You're joking. Again, I'm not gonna sit here and give you an in-depth summary and analysis of this book, but I will say this was very easy to read. It was very easy to understand. It was kind of funny. Like the one part where the pigs, they get drunk, and then the next day the dictator pig thinks he's dying, so he makes drinking alcohol punishable by death. Turns out he was just hungover. I too feel like I'm dying after I drink alcohol. I'm just so surprised. I didn't think I would like this the way that I do. I have to say, I do understand why and think it's very valid that they have us read this in school. This takes very complex political issues and social dynamics and distills it into a cute, fun little story about farm animals. It does make it very easy to understand how language and intelligence levels are used and manipulated in order to get people to follow a certain political ideation, if you will. So I have to say, my overall ruling on this is valid. I feel like I could take a test on this right now. Should we do that? Animal Farm Practice Quiz. Okay, let's try this one. Everything seems to go downhill with the expulsion of the farm of Snowball. Wait, the correct answer is right there. What do you mean? Take quiz. 13 questions. Let's go. What is the name of the farm that the animals live on? This is about to be too easy. Okay, I don't like that one. That's stupid. Let's try Cliff's Notes. I want to get a hard one. Oh, after which Russian leader is Old Major modeled? Okay, this. The actual history behind it. Okay, stop asking me these questions. Ask me different questions, please. Oh, I know. We're done here. The next book we're gonna read, I'm actually very excited for this one. Lord of the Flies. I'm so excited to reread this. I don't remember what year I initially read this, but I do think it was like in the earlier years of high school. So I remember this very little. However, I am excited for this because of cannibalism. I just love cannibalism. Not participating in it, but I do love to read about it. Also, can we take a look at this cover? I think this is like the same special edition as the Jane Eyre copy that I have. Yes, I think these are from like the same collection. So cool. Guys, am I being a collector right now? A classics collector? Anywho, this is Lord of the Flies by William Golding. All I remember about this book is that it is about a group of English schoolboys. I think there's a plane crash on a deserted island. They're left to their own devices, and it does result in some sort of cannibalism. That's pretty much all I remember about this book. Slowing down a little bit, but we will persist. I am 68 pages into this, and I can already tell I am liking it a little bit less. The writing style is much less straightforward than Animal Farm was. It is definitely more of that like classic writing style, which I personally don't love. I really am not a classics reader. These books are probably the first time I'm reading classics since high school, honestly. I don't know if there is a specific year this is supposed to take place, but it was originally published in 1954, so that does explain the writing style. I do know that this is supposed to take place at the beginning of a new world war, and these schoolboys are being evacuated from their country as part of the war effort, but then their plane is shot down, so effort squashed. Every time I read or watch something like this, something with a disaster that people have to survive, a plane crash, an avalanche, the Titanic, I am reminded of how much of a survivor I am not. I am simply not going to tough anything out. I hate being cold. I am not that strong of a swimmer, and I'm sure as hell not going to eat human meat if that's what it comes down to. So like it's fine. I'll just die. Like I don't need to survive. Like these boys have crashed on this island and they're excited about it. They're like, ooh, no adult supervision. We have this whole island to ourselves. Which I, on the other hand, would be crying for my mother. But I mean, if you think about it, if I did have to choose to try and survive somewhere, a tropical island would probably be my first pick. Definitely nowhere with snow. The minute my toes start freezing and breaking off and I have frostbite, I'm done. So yeah, they've crashed. They've figured out that they're on a deserted island. They start organizing. They're putting committees together. There's the hunters. There's the boys who are building their shelters. They also have boys who are monitoring the fire in case someone sees the smoke. Like, they're doing as best as they can. That's where we're at for right now. Still very much in the build-up. Let's continue. Do you guys see this? This is literally what the people were begging for. I'm actually so excited for this. If you haven't heard the news, we are getting a whole new Hunger Games book and movie about Haymitch's games. I think Haymitch is probably one of my favorite book/movie characters ever. Now I really feel like I'm back in high school. Like, Hunger Games is coming back. I'm reading these books. All I really need is the Anastasia dip brow so I can give myself the most heinous eyebrows you've ever seen, because that's what I used to do in high school. Sharpies. It's actually been about a day since I talked to you guys. I am 186 pages into this, and I have to be honest, it's not giving me exactly what I wanted out of it. There are some things that I don't necessarily like about it, but I do have to be honest, I am a little bit nervous to say anything negative about any of these books, because then I feel like the classics and the academics are gonna come after me and be like, well, you're just stupid. I think I just need to finish this and then build up my courage a little bit, and then I'll share my thoughts. But as of right now, we're not feeling great. We're not loving like I thought I would. I've also been high-key procrastinating reading this because last night, instead of reading, all I did was binge watch Graveyard Girl on YouTube. You guys remember Bunny? I used to love her videos and I haven't watched them in a really long time, and so I was just going back and watching all of her old videos and I was feeling amazing. I was feeling so comforted and so nostalgic. Like, I really feel like I've been watching YouTube my entire life. Think of every YouTube era you can think of. I've been there for it. Like the OG Tumblr days, the 2016 beauty guru phase, like literally all of it. That's what I've been doing instead of reading. But I'm gonna read a little bit now. Actually, hopefully a lot of it, so I can finish this and move on. It's the way that I was just so astronomically wrong about there being cannibalism in this book. The one thing that I was the most excited for. When people don't eat each other in the book you're reading. Okay, ew. But I really would have bet my life that these little boys ended up eating each other. There is one moment where they're eating an unnamed meat. There are no specific instances / descriptions of cannibalism whatsoever. I feel like this is my own personal Mandela effect. We're done with this. I did finish it last night again. I am still a little bit nervous to say anything negative about this, but we're just gonna do it. I feel like I really would have enjoyed like a modern day Lord of the Flies. Like if somebody wrote this book today, but at the same time, a modern day Lord of the Flies probably wouldn't hold the same value that this one does in the literature world. This truthfully does have a lot of elements that I do like to read about. I do love a good descent from humanity, a good descent to madness. There are a lot of themes in this book. There are a lot of angles to analyze things from, which makes sense. It makes sense that this is a very commonly taught book in school. But I would say one of the most obvious themes in this is that deviation from humanity, from civilization. Like, these little boys do turn into savages. I don't know if I would have liked it more if it was more plot focused, because in my opinion this is very character focused. It's very focused on the dynamics between the characters, because each boy or each character is, I guess, supposed to represent a different facet of humanity. Like the one main kid, he's supposed to represent rationality and morality, and the opposing kid is supposed to represent like power and anger and impulsivity. And this is very much about how those opposing forces kind of like battle it out to see what wins out. There were some moments that I liked. There were some pieces of writing that I liked. I liked the darker, kind of grittier pieces of the book. I just didn't necessarily love the writing style, which again, I understand that's what makes this book valuable. It is a classic. The point of it is the writing style, so don't hate me. Let's move on. For the third and final book of this video, we are going to be reading what I would say is the English class book to end all English class books. Like if I say, what singular book do you think of when you think of high school English class? What would you say? Correct. To Kill a Mockingbird. Sorry to those of you who said anything else. Also sorry if any of you were expecting Shakespeare in this video. I do feel like Shakespeare is a very quintessential part of the high school English experience. However, I do have a personal vendetta against Shakespeare that I will not be getting into at this point in time. But in my opinion, I feel like this is the representative book of high school English literature. Are any of these books banned? Like, I don't know if they still teach any of these books in school. I was in high school like 2014 to 2018. Oh my god. I was a freshman 10 years ago. That's disgusting. But times do change very rapidly, so I could see that these books would be very controversial today in school? I guess I could just Google it, couldn't I? Can I get a list, please? Top 10 most challenged books of 2023. The Perks of Being a Wallflower. To Kill a Mockingbird is a banned book. It's on this list. The Handmaid's Tale. I did see that The Handmaid's Tale was like banned, probably in Florida, which, to ban The Handmaid's Tale, and we're basically in the start of it in real life, that's a different topic. Don't support the book ban. Read banned books. That's my political statement of this video. But To Kill a Mockingbird, I do remember the basic plot of this book. I do remember liking it, but I'm not going to make the same mistake with Lord of the Flies and talk about specifics before I actually start it. So yeah, I'm going to start our final book of this video. I'm going to read a little bit of it, and then we'll be back. Research, I am in fact reading some of the most famous banned books of all time. It is the next day. I am 115 pages into this. I'm on chapter 11, and I'm kind of having a hard time figuring out how to talk about this book, because you really cannot talk about this book without talking about its racial impact, and I am clearly not the source for that. Like, if I were to just come on here and say this is such a heartwarming, tender coming of age story and not mention anything else, that just wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. I guess I'm just trying to find a line of talking about this book in a way that respects its status as a classic, but also acknowledge that there are other aspects in this book that should be discussed that I am also not the best source for. Like, it's not my place. But if you somehow are unfamiliar with To Kill a Mockingbird, maybe you weren't assigned to read it in school, you're not from America, I don't know. This is about a little girl named Scout. She's growing up in segregated Alabama during the 20s or 30s, I believe. And yes, while this book is very much about her growing up, one of, if not the main plotline in this book is that her father, who is a lawyer, is defending a black man who is accused of raping a white woman. Obviously, this causes Scout to be exposed to racism, to prejudice, to all of those things, and we are reading about her taking all of it in and trying to understand it as a young child. While this book does have some very serious topics, there is still this whole like coming of age, childhood nostalgia that you get out of it. It's very much about her and her brother growing up, playing outside, going to school. It's about Scout learning how women are perceived at that time period and what it means to become a woman. Like I said before, I do remember enjoying this the first time that I read it. I mean, I would say back then I enjoyed it as far as like assigned reading went. However, it does feel like I'm reading this book for the first time. I think I read this freshman year, so now as a 24-year-old, it very much does feel like I'm reading it for the first time. I enjoy reading from Scout's perspective as a young girl. She's very scrappy. She reminds me a little bit of Junie B. Jones almost, or Junie B. Jones reminds me of her. Obviously, her father, Atticus Finch, he is one of the most beloved characters in literature of all time, I would say. So yeah, I would say that this is going very well so far. ended. I'm on page 276 and I completely forgot like the outcome of the trial, what ends up happening with Tom Robinson, who is the man that Atticus is defending. Hey, boo. Summer, and he watched his children's heartbreak. Autumn again, and Boo's children needed him. I'm almost 100% sure that the back of my head looks absolutely ridiculous. Not my problem. I have officially finished To Kill a Mockingbird, and I have to say, if you had to read this book for school, if you read it a really long time ago, whether it was in middle school or high school, I highly recommend you go back and read this of your own free will. I do have to agree with 90% of the population. It's a good book. At the same time, we can still acknowledge how outdated it is. Okay, at the time, people probably thought that this was a grand old way to teach children about prejudice and racism and acceptance, judging other people, but this would probably never be written today, especially by a white woman. I did not know that Harper Lee was a white woman. So I can acknowledge both of those things at the same time. I can understand why people love this. It is heartwarming-ish, the ending. You know, it is somewhat of a happy ending. There is that childhood-like nostalgia. People love these characters, etc. I do understand that. But at the same time, we're a little iffy there on quite a bit. I know everybody loves Atticus. And don't get me wrong, he's a great man. But I love Boo. The whole Boo storyline and just how he watched over the kids and protected them, it was not creepy. But I would say that this was a very successful reading vlog. Like, I'm very happy that I decided to go back and revisit some of these books that I have not read in years and years and years. I would definitely say that I appreciate them and understand them in a completely different way than I did when I was in school, when I was a child, when I was a young angsty teen. Honestly, just in general, I love going back and rereading books that I haven't read in years. Like, I love a good reread, but I don't mean rereading a book that I read a year ago. Like, books that I read when I was an entirely different person and an entirely different point in my life. Because you can perceive and understand books in a completely different way when you're older, because you are basically a different person. I know I am. If I were to meet my 15-year-old self, I would probably beat her up. She was annoying. But that's it for this video. I want to know if any of you guys also read these books in school. Or if you're currently in school, like high school, what books are they making you read in English class? Let me know. But I really hope you enjoyed. I hope you decide to stick around. And I'll see you in the next one.